Hi, welcome to
Hi, Ravi.
Construction One-on-One, Episode 5. Hi, Alex, with Ravi Bhatia, presenting Alex Alexandrov, principal at the Atlas Builders Group. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing quite well on this wonderful Sunday morning. It's not as frigid as yesterday, so enjoying
It's
my day
certainly
as
a
well.
lot warmer than yesterday. Yesterday was
Oh yeah,
cold.
absolutely.
Alex, I want to thank you for joining us. What's really cool about doing these talks is that I have the privilege, and also our viewers have the privilege of learning about construction journeys that are important, learning about the industry, where we're heading, where the value proposition is. And we've known each other now coming up on 10 years. And want to talk about your unique journey. You've done
Sure,
some very interesting things that got you to this place, but it didn't happen overnight, and it certainly wasn't easy to get to where you are now.
that's for sure. I mean, it spans a roughly 20-year career, and I started in real estate development and finance before I became a general contractor and construction manager and owner's rep. And for me, it was getting to this point was really building the right team, finding the right partners. I happen to have come along a very, very long journey in terms of where I am today. We've been a GC for about 10 years, and it definitely didn't start off as smooth as intentionally as things look on a pitch deck, or as things play out in a Excel spreadsheet when everything fits neatly and nicely into rows and cells. Um, it's a rocky journey, and I think it kind of comes with the territory for anybody that goes off on their own and chooses a path that is uncertain to some extent, and with the opportunities are certainly available, but you're not quite sure which one may be rewarding and which one would be a minefield that you're stumbling into. So we've learned both the easy way, the hard way, and it's been an education that's been extremely fruitful, rewarding, challenging, and every other emotion that I can throw into it.
I mean, I think about the career risk that you take, right? Because you don't get something
Hmm.
for nothing. You
Yeah.
forego opportunities to develop a career path within an organization or within an industry,
Hmm.
taking that huge leap, having enough faith in yourself. How do you do that?
Well, I think to some extent it's a combination of things. So I have a fantastic role model in my mom who, and being an immigrant, we came to the States in 1994. I got to see her build a small family business, and she still runs a daycare that she started in 1995. And even though she didn't, necessarily scale and became, publicly traded company, she's still running a business that was able to allow my folks to essentially establish a middle class, upper middle class life in a country that has a lot of opportunity. And they made the sacrifices to come here so that I could have a better life, so that I could have a better journey for my family. And I think that risk taking with both of my parents' analytical background and being mechanical engineers was part of my drive and inspiration to be able to take the risk. And the fact that we're in New York City, the opportunities are certainly there. You just have to find the right partners and the right people to work with, the right clients that I'd like to pay their bills, which is very important. Um, and So that journey started for me fairly early on. I kind of, even in my 20s, wanted to go off on my own at some point in time. And I made that transition when I developed a skill set in affordable housing finance after spending about 8 years on the development side. So I was a development consultant for-profit groups and nonprofit developers, and helping them both project manage and underwrite deals. And that's how I started getting exposure to the construction industry. And I met my partner Michael, who was a senior site super, making a very healthy salary with benefits and downtime, and all the other perks that come with an upper level construction management position in New York City. And he, at the time, was willing to also take a leap of faith and see what else we can do, because we got to witness a handful of folks in the industry that were royally screwing up a project. So I was an owner's rep on a project that was an 88 unit job in the Bronx. It was a modular rehab, nothing fancy. Replacing roofs, replacing boilers, replacing elevators, and doing kitchen and bath improvements. So it wasn't a high end job. There was absolutely nothing that was technically truly challenging about the project. And we witnessed a general contractor that's been in the business for probably 30 years royally screw up the job. And he took 26 months to carry out an 18-month contract that could have been done probably in 14 or 12 months if it was properly set up and managed. We got to see 3 electricians be underpaid, fired, liens being placed. It was interesting, and this was a $4 million New York City funded project through layers of subsidy and agency funding. And the issue that we saw was in those kinds of projects, it's very difficult to replace a general contractor because they already have a bond in place, project is already ongoing, funds are committed. The cost to switch is so substantial that you kind of stuck with that person throughout that terrible journey that you're in. So that was kind of an inspiration to both my partner Mike and I, where we thought we could do a much better job. We could make money in the process. We could provide a much better service to our clients. And then we launched Atlas Builders almost 10 years ago. And then we found out exactly how hard it is to actually be able to do all those things that we wanted to do.
It's taking that risk, really getting the right team together. I knowing you and Michael for 10 years, you have such complementary skill sets.
Absolutely.
So with your background in finance and development, and I think having a development background as a contractor is huge because you understand the owner's pain points, and Michael has a tremendous technical knowledge of the industry, his background as a civil engineer, and really you had the perfect fit, right? And when I first met you in 2014, and I was struggling in the company I was with, a developer, we were struggling with that synagogue renovation or reconstruction of the synagogue into a combined use condo and shul on the Lower East Side. When we found you, we knew that we had the right team in place. And I think this is a good lesson for people who are in the industry, climbing the industry and climbing that ladder, and to young people who want to join the industry. It's the level of preparation that you exhibited in that first meeting. You knew the job better than we did, and that impressed the hell out of us. And when you walked out of that meeting, the principal of the company I was with, he turned to me and he said, "We're gonna hire these guys." And we had 10 bids. Yours was the highest, but we knew that you were the company because you provided the most value for our project. You identified things that cost us a lot more down the line that the other bidders didn't tell us about. We would have paid the price a lot more later, but to the principal's, I guess to the principal's credit, that he understood that in the long run, you had the best value for what we were trying to do. And I think that in development and in construction, that's something to always think about, that, who's providing the best value from a point of view and from a team point of view.
Yeah, and we also had something to prove. I think, yeah, we still do. We still operate in that kind of mentality that we try to put ourselves in the shoes of the clients that we work with. We try to understand not just their pain points, but what it is that they're looking to accomplish, what their budget is. And that's why a lot of times we just frankly ask, "What's your budget?" As opposed to, we also provide, our detailed cost estimates. We go through all the line items to figure out logistics issues and everything else that goes into running a job. But I think on a genuinely simple level, in that particular project, it came out of nowhere for us because it was through the Honest Buildings website, which is no longer providing the kind of service of kind of creating a marketplace for developers and contractors to be able to find each other. And we found that opportunity only because it was something that I read about in the news. We put up a portfolio, put up a handful of other projects, and we got the bidding opportunity, and we went in for it.
The timing was crazy though, because
yeah,
I found Honest Buildings, and I spoke to the founder. This was before we met, and our team said, this is an interesting platform, this technology platform that connects bidders with the developer, and we can post our drawings. And that was a little bit of a sell, but once I sold our team on that idea, we started getting bids from all sorts of contractors, and we said, wow, it was a little overwhelming. And then the problem became, okay, we've got 10 bidders, so who do we talk to and how does that work? And Honest Buildings, they provided the right platform, the right tool for us at the time. And the founder of that actually is now at Procore, and the team did very well for themselves there. So they had good backing. But without that, I don't think we would have found you. You know, it was like a needle in a haystack. It was just really a slog, I think.
Absolutely, I think so too. And we were always tech savvy from the get go. I think it's partially because both my partner and I, we initially we were kind of computer nerds before we branched off into our own respective industries. He was on a computer science track before he switched to civil engineering. I was always a geek when it came to computers and technology before I went into finance. And I think having that kind of mindset of trying to figure out how to utilize technology to our benefit, we rolled out Procore, and now it's become an industry standard and a publicly traded company. But we took it on, I think it was maybe 8 years ago, when it was still kind of clunky. It was much better than some of the competing aging construction management software that's been in business for the previous 20, 30 years. And we adopted it in a way that our entire company ran on it. So we utilized it for back office, front office, plan coordination, project management, documentation. And for us, it was, at that time, we used to self-perform a lot of different trades. We had concrete crews, carpentry crews. We would typically on the 6th Street job, I think performed close to 60% of the overall GC contract with our own forces. And that's pretty atypical of most general contractors or CMs. Usually contractors would have their own general labor, or they might have a sheetrock crew, or maybe not, depending on the kind of work that they do. But the fact that we did demolition and masonry and concrete operations and then finishes on this high-end building, for us, going all in and utilizing technology and cost, basically tracking all of our costs across those different line items was extraordinarily helpful in having us make a profit and be able to carry out the job in a way that makes sense. So
that self-performed capability that you had really was critical to the project, because I think you subbed out the steel and certain elements of the MEP, the electrical you subbed out, right? But
all the license.
Tremendous site control, safety control, quality control. And I went to your website and I saw the pictures of the synagogue. Just fantastic. A successful project for everybody. And you put in the right financial and operational structures to bring that project, which actually was stuck in the mud, as you recall.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always, not always, but fairly recently, we find ourselves in the position of having to pick up the slack of basically taking up a leadership post in order to get the project across the finish line, whether it's in the middle of a job that we take over on a stalled project, which we've been kind of established a proficiency in taking on stalled jobs where there's a bunch of issues that other contractors won't necessarily touch. And it's not because we want to take on as much risk as possible. It's because now we have a good understanding of, having performed those trades in-house, how to value the cost to finish, how to properly set up the project for it to be safe before we can actually get started in a productive sort of way. And having had that experience and difficult education of running several components of a company at the same time, it kind of prepared us to be much better at it and not shy away from an opportunity that others would pass over, because it's too much brain damage, a lot of uncertainty, and for us, we view that as an opportunity. Where
look, this is not easy, right?
And
I'm glad you mentioned safety, because it starts with you setting up the project properly. Means that you're going to manage it safely, and the safety and the quality go together. And taking on those messy projects, the challenging projects, and unless you've done that many times, like you have, it's very challenging to value those projects properly. The developers sometimes are small, mid-sized companies, investors who also are challenged, because they are essentially taking a shot in the dark when they're budgeting the construction cost, right? Somebody gives them a quote and they may not have enough experience, and they're carrying the wrong square footage number, or they're applying a metric that doesn't work based on the specifics of the project that you're doing, right?
So
that's
and
never
also,
an easy
it's not easy for sure, and it's also, New York City is one of the toughest places to build, both from a regulatory and administrative standpoint as well. And we've had the experience of getting DOB visits where you have a retired, union carpenter that became a DOB inspector, and those guys we love because we can speak the same language. They understand what we're trying to accomplish on the site, and they'll provide us with direction and give us guidance on some of the things that they may see that are, either out of line or could be done better, as opposed to trying to sit in their Prius for the next 2 hours writing up tickets just because they can and because they find something. Which handful of other inspectors, especially some of the newer crop that doesn't have that trade experience and building knowledge, but do know how to write tickets as if they're parking attendants, that became kind of a different dynamic that just makes it a little bit more difficult to build, because then you have to put everything on hold. Everybody has to take a break while you're walking the DOB inspector through, and you lose some time in production on that. And as perfect as we try to maintain the job sites in general, and we do as best as we can, when you're talking to somebody that's an industry player that has the experience of constructing something, it becomes a completely different conversation, and they'll provide positive feedback in a way that is useful to us, as opposed to just penalizing because they can, because they have to either meet a quota or something else that they're incentivized to do. So definitely it hasn't been easy constructing in New York, and nor do we expect it to be. And I feel like there's a big kind of shift that took place during the previous mayoral administration that wasn't great for smaller builders, because larger shops already have hundreds of thousands of general conditions allocated to DOB inspections and tickets and violations. When you're on a tight margin job and your entire contract is, let's say, $1 million or a couple of $1 million, or if it's a small commercial build out, it could be less than that. That $5,000 penalty hits against your salary, your payroll, your other expenses that you have to carry as overhead. And even if you're at fault, there's really not a way to recoup that.
Yeah.
But those are just the small business challenges that most builders.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to carry. You can't carry $100,000 for fines
right
and shutdowns on a $2 million job. I mean,
of course, our clients would never pay for it.
You couldn't make any money doing that.
We never get the bid.
Before we recorded this call, we talked about the approach that you have, and I think a very methodical and systematic approach to planning and pre-construction.
Absolutely.
What does that look like from your viewpoint and from Michael's viewpoint as principals of Atlas?
That's a great question. I mean, we have our own roles to play, and both of us are very active on the client management side. And it's, with larger firms, you don't necessarily get both the CEO and the chief operating officer and co-founders be as hands-on as we are. Aside from the client management standpoint, but also laying out a strategy for the project. Usually that's delegated to project management teams and project executives. And because we play kind of a handful of those roles personally with our project management and construction teams, for us, we understand where our clients come from in terms of what they're trying to accomplish a lot of the times. And then we lay out the framework that they need to make decisions on in order to be able to accomplish what they need to do. And very oftentimes on commercial projects, you are constrained by a rent-free period. If we're doing a tenant build-out, for example, for either a corporate office or a restaurant or any kind of commercial space, there's a very limited window during which you have the ability to construct the project while also finishing the design components, because a lot of times you get a half-baked set of plans that generally is missing a lot of detail or isn't properly coordinated with the mechanical structural drawings. Then we get a millwork package when we're already in production, and we should have gotten it 3 months before so that we can actually price it out. And all those different components come into play. We find it much more oftentimes with first-time commercial tenants, where they haven't had that experience of building the team first, including the general contractor or the CM up front. And so on the second and third project with repeat clients, they do hire us for pre-construction consulting, which is the initial phase before, sometimes even before they execute a lease on a new space as part of their build out plan, so that we end up taking a leadership role in coordinating the architecture and design team and following through on the client's wishes and strategy of what it is that they're trying to accomplish with the space. And that, translates to ground up construction, adaptive reuse, retrofit projects, and smaller commercial build out jobs as well that we still do. And we've also had the opportunity to play that role in major building retrofits with an affordable housing client of ours that has roughly 60 buildings throughout the city. And they own several portfolios that are in various stages of aging. You have aging infrastructure. These buildings were built in the 20s. They were rehabbed in the 80s, maybe. So all the mechanical equipment is inefficient at this point in time, and it's well maintained as best as it possibly can. But it's, there's local law 97 coming down the pike, and we basically we had the opportunity to assist them with a portfolio-wide strategy and procuring incentives from various agencies that provide them. So we became their go-to upfront owner's rep and construction and development consultant, and then became the construction manager once that financing strategy is executed. We develop the scopes of work. We bring in the architecture and design teams as needed based on the scopes that we have on a building by building basis. And then we actually carry out the work. So for us, we become the client's go-to one-stop shop. And this is more of a design build approach that you see typically on much larger scale projects. So we try to have that mentality even on small jobs where the client benefits from getting a lot of the coordination issues resolved during the planning phase, as opposed to design, bid, build, which is, you design a set of drawings in a vacuum, or even with construction knowledge, you cost estimate it with third-party estimators that don't necessarily have the field experience to actually know the true pricing of equipment, and don't spend the time going to 5 different suppliers and trying to find the best quote for the mechanical units. And that's what we do. That's where we come in. And then what ends up happening is we get a set of plans, and it's a 100-page set drawings, let's say, with a spec book that could also be hundreds of pages long. We have to put in a bid 2 weeks from now. So we hustle and we rush and we allocate as many resources as we have available to get this work done. We put in a bid, and we probably miss something as part of that process, because if we have 3 months to plan with the architecture and engineering team, that gives.
Yeah, Alex, we've reviewed the challenges that you've had. You've overcome so many hurdles on a professional level, and also taking that big leap into starting a construction company. And I'd say it's a little more than daring, but you have a very good skill set that dovetails well with Michael's. What I'd like to know, and I think what our viewers want to know, is how has your background in technology and finance, how has that helped you to organize your projects and to provide the level of detail to build trust with customers in terms of cost and scope? Because working for developers is certainly not easy when you're a CM or a GC, right?
Yep, for sure. I think, the major difference between my partner and I is that he's a specialist. So his entire passion, a lot of it deals with construction. He's a guy that wants to produce and see things built as efficiently as possible. I'm more of a generalist. So I have a skill set both from my background, my educational background, my previous experience on the development side, that is fairly universal and can be translated to, I would say, almost any form of business in general. And so that division of labor between operations specialist and that, by the way, it's in no way limiting, because his knowledge base is incredibly broad across different trades, different technical skills, the ability to communicate with subcontractors that are from different parts of the world where English is definitely not their first language, ability to corral burly personalities and translate a client's desire into an actionable plan, that is also, there's a lot of general skills that go into that as well. So I tend to have sometimes more of the softer approach. Mike is a little bit more burly in personality, which is also incredibly useful when it comes to getting things done and just kind of cutting to the chase. And I think our personality skills and the ability to communicate and deal with clients from all walks of life, from, we've had such a wide range of folks that we work with in the past, whether it's a buttoned up institutional client that is extremely focused on procedure and documentation and running things in accordance with a particular challenging program, or it's a handful of restaurateurs that don't care about any of that stuff and they just want to open a restaurant in the next 4 months, or an art dealer that is locating from the Upper East Side to Chelsea, and he doesn't care how it gets done or why it gets done, so long as he can open his space in the next 5 months. So right now we have a project that's a modular job with Habitat for Humanities in Queens, and we have 10 different sites that we're working in a fairly residential area, and that's a city-funded project. So our skills are put to use in a different kind of capacity than a superly condensed, fast-paced commercial job that needs to get done no matter what in a very small amount of time, where it's all hands on deck, everybody's going nuts. We have people crammed in every corner of a space working on top of each other because the previous GC royally screwed things up, and now we're trying to make up the difference and condense basically 3 months of work into 6 weeks. And that leads to its own different sets of challenges and coordination issues and just general stress and having to work Saturdays and weekends and whatever needs to be done to get it done. So, I think to some extent for us, in terms of our technology background and how it translates to our ability to project manage well, project management, it's such a universal role to play and a skill set that I think every employee to some extent does. Some are on a broader scale, some are within a smaller set of tasks and responsibilities, but everybody's a project manager. And I think having had that experience early on in my career, where I got to understand how the financing structure of projects works, the impact of schedule on the financials, the impact of project delivery on the performance of a project and how it gets started up, scaling up a team, building networks, building relationships with both new people that we're working with, because we're kind of pushed into a situation where we're the new kids on the block when it comes to the project team. We're not the ones that were involved in selecting everybody that's now working on the job. And then also there's the incredible opportunity for us to be able to generate business for our colleagues, where we have an opportunity to recommend them on a project, where a client comes to us, they don't have an architect or an engineer that they've been working with for the last 10 years, and they need a qualified, well-priced, diligent person to get stuff done. And we have a roster of folks that we enjoyed working with, that we can make a recommendation, give them three references, and then they're able to make an educated decision on it based on both the capabilities and also the personality fit. Because even though
you build trust with clients. Once
Yep.
you build that trust and they bring you in early in the process where you can add the most value, now you're really wearing that consulting hat for the client, walking them through the design process. And that means they have to have a level of trust within you, that you understand the supply chain, where the most economic solutions are going to lie on the project, the best value engineering trade-offs. It all starts with the client's ability or willingness to trust you and your team.
Yep. And it takes a leap. It takes a certain leap of faith. And we try to talk to folks, like we just had a recent experience where we're issuing on a project that we're bidding on for a commercial kitchen. It's a build out in Midtown of an operator that's looking to take a new space and expand their operations. They've already been in the business for many years. It's a second generation family company. So they know what they're doing, both in terms of running a commercial kitchen, having handled several build outs previously, and then right now they're interviewing contractors for the new space. So they interviewed us, and they interviewed another shop that's been in business maybe for 35, 40 years, and they felt that they were talked down to and condescended to, basically because the other GC was dropping names of architects that they should have known maybe, but didn't, and they didn't feel a sort of connection that we try to establish with our clients, which is we understand as business operators ourselves what it takes to actually run a successful company, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it, and establishing that human connection first without trying to pitch somebody on, here's all the things that we can do, here's a list of services that we can provide. I think that really matters significantly, as opposed to just here's the deal and I'm the best, and you should hire me. And
that's a key differentiator for you.
Yeah,
because in my
for sure.
experience, having worked with you when I was on the developer side, that you and Michael have that ability to convey trust without that ego, without
pretense.
without saying, look how great we are. In fact, the homework that you did on the synagogue job, the amount of preparation, and you had no guarantee of winning that project, right? I mean, and we told you up front, like, your number is higher than our budget, but the level of work that you put into that, not knowing whether or not you were going to get that job, that told us a couple of things. And I think this is an important lesson for people who are in construction or who are managing projects or running construction companies, is that when you present yourself to the client, client wants to know that you care about what you do, and that it's not going to be just a transactional relationship. Absolutely. Because when that trust is established, and when it is, it's really a wonderful thing that when you can rely on a contractor or a CM to watch over the financials and the operations and the safety and all the elements of it, and to come up with the right mix of operations, delivery, estimating. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. I think that when clients know that you care, that's the first step, because blowing people away with a lot of knowledge, that really conveys ego, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And, there's some very basic tenets that we've learned from other professionals that we work with from different industries. And we had, we've had the misfortune of being sued as a contractor. That kind of happens over any span of time. And we had instances where we were represented by big white shoe law firms in the city that would charge whatever it is, $6.50 an hour for principal time. And then we found a smaller shop. They still charge, hefty fees, but they're much more reasonable about how they operate. And one of their attorneys taught us, just by an interaction where we send an email, we get an immediate response. And even if it's not the answer or an answer to a question, it's this immediate sort of reaction that you get, that somebody's actually checking your messages, is responding to you, and is telling you that they'll get back to you. And learning from that, we try to translate that to our client relationship management, where we have WhatsApp groups with specifically with our commercial clients, where there's a constant flow of information and decision making and mock-ups that we're putting up. We snap a photo of it, it immediately goes into the group chat. The client says yay or nay. So it's helpful in a fast evolving project to be able to be as engaged and communicative as possible, especially because there's so many decisions that are made up front, and then a substantial amount that happens later on in the project once it's already in progress. So being super responsive, I think, is one of the things that we've learned, that we've noticed, like, from the experience with our attorney. This is what, like, we've now given all of any kind of business when it comes to representation, whether it's on the transaction side or any other ways, to that firm, as opposed to working with, the more established shop, let's say. So
a client calls you, right? Sorry, a client calls you on a Sunday afternoon. You pick up the phone, right?
I won't.
That's
I'll text it back saying, I'm with my son, I'll get back to you tomorrow morning. Like, that's
okay.
There's certain things that are sacred.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
But basically you're responsive to your clients. To what extent does that involve anticipating what the client may want before the client tells you? Like, that's really not easy to do.
For sure. I mean, I think to some extent we try to understand their operations and how their business is going to be set up logistically. So whether it's flow of traffic or it's flow of product or whatever it is that's within a commercial space that's going to be utilized, we try to get into, we try to understand their business operations in addition to what it is that they want us to build. And that helps us basically come up with, anticipate potential problems that they might encounter after the fact. Once we build a space and all of a sudden they realize it's not configured in a way that makes as logical sense or is more efficient as it can be. So we've had the fortune of working with a wide variety of clients, from building out paddle courts to commercial kitchens, to office spaces, to nonprofit offices, to restaurants, and a massive dance club and a large hotel. Like, all these different elements we get to learn from our clients and how their businesses operate, and then we get to see some of the mistakes that they make, so that in the future, if we have a similar type of client, we can advise that next relationship of what to look out for, or what a potential expediting strategy could be in order to be able to hit the milestones and be able to start construction earlier, as opposed to kind of how to split up demolition filings from the retrofit filing, whatever it is that needs to be done. So all that experience we kind of carry with us, and we offer it as part of our services on the planning phase.
Wow. So it's been a very interesting journey, that 10-year journey. What is the next, or what do the next 10 years look like from your viewpoint? How do you, can you even look that far ahead, or are you focused on just doing the right thing for your customers?
It's a great question. And, if you asked me 10 years ago, if we'd be building major hotels or being an affordable housing retrofit specialist and assisting clients and basically making their energy buildings much more energy efficient and helping them procure incentives, while also building out restaurants and small commercial spaces, I wouldn't have been able to predict that, because it's not, for us, it hasn't been a linear sort of growth curve where everything just kind of gradually goes up. For us, it's been, we went from doing commercial work to ground up opportunities. That's where you and I started working together on a historic preservation and ground up job at the same time. And that was, within the range of a certain square footage for a building. So we were, for a while, operating, doing ground up buildings that were 15, 20, 30,000 square feet. And all of a sudden, a developer took a chance on us, gave us an award for a 45,000 square foot hotel in Long Island City. We kicked ass at it. He had another building that he bought that's 230,000 square feet. So now we're in the category of operating on a much larger scale with a bigger staff, still having a strong back office. And then transitioning to helping one of our clients that we built a high-end condo for, that was an 8-unit project that we finished, 3 years ago. But they happen to own 60 other buildings that are in need of retrofitting and other services that we can then layer on top of our base core of construction management and general construction. So it's very difficult for me to be able to say what opportunities are going to come up in the next couple of years. We just know that from experience, we have to be ready. And when the opportunity does present itself, we go full steam ahead and do everything we can possibly do to make the best of it, and to provide the best kind of service that we can to our clients that will help them come out with a better product at the end once we're finished on the construction side.
Right. So I like the way you outlined that when you're scaling up your organization, right, you're obviously thinking about staffing. How is that staffing operation, look like, recruiting, staffing, keeping people? I had the opportunity to meet with a couple of your really outstanding project managers about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was clear that you were nurturing the growth of their careers. You're also trying to get the right people. What does that look like, and where do you see the challenges going forward as you get bigger? Do you fear that you would lose some of that touch, because scaling up a construction company requires that you let go of certain aspects of the work, right?
For sure. Delegating responsibility is always challenging, because when you think about a particular task, like if it's between Mike and myself and a handful of other folks in our organization, it's a lot of times might be just easier to get it done ourselves, but it doesn't provide a teaching opportunity. It doesn't, if we are the bottlenecks for everything that flows through our company, that happens pretty quickly. So we get spread way too thin if we're trying.
There's only 2 of you, right? it's
There is, it's two of us on the ownership side. We've spun off our consulting services and brought on a third partner who's the managing partner of the owner's rep and consulting side, because we knew that she could handle the scaling and the operations way better than my partner and I could. So we took a leap after working with her for about a year. And now she's a 60% owner of the consulting entity that Michael and I are still partners on. So in terms of leveraging our resources internally, it's always kind of a chicken and the egg situation, because we're bidding on projects, and in the field we staff up as the need arises. So I wouldn't be able to still be in business if I had 5 site supers just in the wings waiting for the next job to strike and for me to carry their payroll until the next job comes. We try to nurture our talent specifically on the project management side to provide them opportunities that are very field related. So when we hire, let's say, a young assistant project manager that's fresh out of school, we put them in a field office where they're spending roughly 50% of their time actually watching a job get built, as opposed to sitting in front of a monitor, shuffling RFIs and submittals back and forth between architects and clients. So that kind of field experience gets them an opportunity to understand the trades, the work that's actually ongoing. So when they're buying out a job or they're working on a construction budget for a particular client, and there's multiple trade breakdowns for the different elements that are involved, they actually physically understand and visually realize what the work that's going to go into that particular line item is. And if they're completely insulated from the field experience, they don't get that kind of exposure. So I think we provide a very broad, extremely valuable opportunity for professionals to learn from everything that's ongoing in our operation. And we are very hands-on in getting them, there's nothing that's walled off. So for example, the project manager will see the budget, they'll see the schedule, they'll see our construction contracts, they see the insight in the decision-making that we make on an executive level, because we include them as part of executive conference calls with our clients on most things. So they get a level of access that they typically wouldn't in much more kind of vertically organized organizations, which is a little bit not the way that we have even ever kind of run. We're much more integrated and collaboration based, and there's no cutthroat competitiveness within our firm. We all try to nurture each other's abilities to grow and to figure out what path people would like to be on, and give them an opportunity to go toward that direction. So, for example, we had a young PM that joined us with very little experience, and she proved to be extremely diligent and competent, where my subs would start complaining that she's emailing and texting them, calling them nonstop. And I would say, well, did you get her the thing that you said you were going to get to her? The answer is no. So I'm like, well, she's doing her job. So that's tough. And that's okay. And then she displayed an interest in concrete operations. And at the time, we had an in-house concrete arm. So she became our go-to concrete PM for superstructure work, for foundations, for flat work, because that happened to be a trade that she really enjoyed working with. And so we were able to channel her interests and passions into the field that was accessible and available to us. And we always try to ask the folks that we work with, what is it that you find interesting? What's exciting to you within the field of construction? What kind of work would you like to work on, or types of projects that you'd like to manage? And then we try to provide them with the opportunity to be able to handle those kinds of jobs. And because we've had such a wide variety of projects, if you want to be a commercial build out PM, you can, if you're working with us. If you want to handle multifamily retrofits on a sustainability angle, if that's more interesting or exciting to you, you have that option as well. So we have an ability to kind of channel resources into specifically to match the interests of our folks that work with us. And sometimes
that's
everybody has to do some paperwork that nobody likes to do anyway, because that's part of the job as well.
It's really very thoughtful the way you work with the teams within your company while balancing their careers, and at the same time the focus, of course, is on the customer. For younger people entering the industry, it's important that they actually understand that they need to get a wide variety of experiences in order to be well-rounded enough to add as much value as they can to a project. And I think the fact that, you guys are aware of that, sometimes young people can get pigeonholed, but really getting that field experience early is very important to a construction career, right?
Yeah, I think it helps develop a very broad set of skills that is then that they can utilize either working with us or in a different shop. And we recruited a project manager a couple of years ago that was finished a school with mechanical engineering degree, and she was designing. She worked for a mechanical engineering firm in Jersey, designing public works, so water and sewer projects. And she was just sitting in front of a computer working in CAD for 8 to 10 hours a day. And she realized that she wanted to have a broader kind of experience on the construction side. So we're able to present her with an opportunity to work with us. And that CAD experience and working on in a structured, integrated, experienced large firm was actually useful to us because she was already utilized. She already had a skill set in document management and working on tiered projects where you have many different elements involved. So we benefited from her previous experience working at larger firms. She benefited from our experience of being extremely hands-on in all of our construction jobs. And, promotions come along with additional responsibility, and she's been able to really step into a broader role. And there's always an opportunity for that.
Wow. Looking at technologies, you've embraced technology, you understand the cost and the financial side of it, and you have people that are being trained to manage and work with clients. Where does the emerging technology landscape fit into what you're doing? And I'm talking about specifically, digital tools, mobile tools, even AI to an extent, because that's coming up, that's at the forefront. There's so much technology that's being embraced by the industry, and construction, as you know, has been a laggard industry. How do you and Michael view technology as a facilitator for what you do? And do you see opportunities for yourself in integrating technology into what you do to a greater extent than you've already done?
So we've deployed Procore early on that allowed us to operate at a level with and compete with much larger CMs that have been around for much longer than we have. So for us, deploying technology early in our company growth was kind of instrumental in setting up our operations to be cloud-based, and that actually helped us tremendously during the pandemic, because when everything hit and everybody went remote, we were already set up for it. So everybody already had their platforms and training in managing projects remotely. So for us, basically investing in our early deployment of technology in our career was instrumental in the survival of our firm during a very rough time, where all of the projects that we had going on during the pandemic were deemed non-essential. So we had DOB stop work orders on all of our jobs at the same day. That was an interesting and challenging time, and pretty dark, even though many other jobs were allowed to continue operating. And even though we had all the COVID time protocols and safety measures and PPE and everything that we had done to protect our employees and our workers, didn't matter. All of a sudden we were shut down. So the fact that we were distributed and we're able to operate like our back office has been for the last 5 or 6 years working from home. Partially that was based on family choices that our employees have made that we were able to accommodate. And that kind of flexible structure allowed us to continue to function in a way that kept our employees happy and gave them an ability to spend time with family that they typically wouldn't have, or those couple extra hours commuting into Midtown from Brooklyn or from other parts of the city, they were able to retain and have. And then so long as they get their work done, for me, it doesn't really matter when or how they do it. And but having a concentrated office in Manhattan, I think is, we're kind of going back to that model in a couple of weeks, and having one home base to be able to all get together and gather in a social sort of way while getting work done is also beneficial. So there's kind of two sides to that. But in terms of developing technology and deploying it really depends on what the client's willing to pay for. So for us, a lot of the projects that we worked on in the past were on a smaller scale, condo jobs where you have to build it for bottom dollar, and nobody really gives a crap about, virtualization or AI or augmented reality or an ability to do a 3D scan of a structure. Like, they're not going to pay for it. So we take on the opportunity to develop or to take on technology as the projects that come up that allow us to pay for it. So for example, we on the affordable housing retrofit projects that we have, that allowed us to switch gears into energy modeling with an engineering firm that we've already been working closely with previously, and create a strategic partnership to be able to provide an early stage analysis of a building. So utilizing their energy modeling software and skill set combined with our proficiency and understanding of building mechanical, electrical, and structural systems, we're able to do early stage reporting and provide the client with a lot more information than they would if they went down the road and try to create a scope of work based on a 150-page engineer's report. So it's a combination of trying to figure out what can the project support, where can we kind of push the envelope when it comes to technology, and to take on as many interesting initiatives as we can if the project can fund it. And then leveraging our construction experience and figuring out what the best tool skill set is to be able to apply it to the job as intelligently as possible.
Yeah, that common thread that you've touched on is that you're able to provide value to your customers. You adapt technology as needed where it adds value. You're certainly not shy about technology because you're very tech savvy, but you're also very practical that where it adds value and the customer can pay for it, great. On smaller and mid-sized projects, maybe not, but on larger projects that are more structured where they need those technologies, you're able to scale up and do that. I feel like we could be talking for hours here with all these great experiences, lessons that certainly we can share with the industry. And I'm very excited about the future of your organization under your leadership and Michael's leadership, and it'll be interesting to see how you continue to evolve with the industry. I think somewhere in the near future we'll have you back on to see how this story continues to evolve, and it's all really great. I want to thank you for sharing excellent lessons for construction professionals, for organizations, for team building. This really guides us on how construction success, what are the common elements of construction success, and I think that you've captured so much of that and you've shared it with us, and I'm very thankful that you have, and looking forward to a bright future for you and your organization. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you so much for the kind words. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.